I think when I was with you a number of years ago, I started out that economists are very negative. They've predicted 8 of the last 3 recessions. I'm surprised you brought me back, especially that in light of when I was with you in 2008. Wouldn't it have been nice to know we're going to have the worst recession that we're ever going to have in 08, 09, and 10? Boy, talk about my profession falling on its face, including myself. So it just fits. Why do economists become economists? Because they do not have the personality to become an accountant. Why do they bury economists 30 feet under the ground? Because down deep, they're really good people. So I guess we get to start anew, and I'm just delighted to be with you again for this meeting. And last night, I swore I'd never eat again, and there I sat at the breakfast table going right at it again. So these are really great meetings, and it was so fun to see the 45 kids with all the balloons on their heads and eating pizza, and that was just really, really neat. Today I'm going to look at 3 subjects. 1, history. 2, recoveries. 3, recessions and recoveries. Those are the 3. History, recessions, and recovery. History, I would just like to look at 6 words. What 6 words could build a country? What 6 words could change the world? I would argue that our founding fathers figured it out, and their first word was freedom. They would say that freedom is the mainspring of economic prosperity. They would say that freedom is a country's best investment. They would say that freedom is a virus for which there is no antidote. More freedom, more bread. More freedom, more per capita income. And so even though economics as a profession cannot do controlled experiments because there are no variables that can stay the same. People are changing every single day. It's much easier in science and chemistry and biology and medicine to have some controlled variables to do experiments and to say something then wise about what you've just tried to prove or not to prove. Economics is a lot more difficult than that. But we'd have to say that economics does say a few things that are helpful, and we're going to try today, to bring through some of those things that can be helpful in your industry. Freedom is the mainspring of economic progress and a country's best investment. The best experiment we can do to show that, it's not perfect, but take a place like Berlin, West Berlin, freedom, West Berlin, vibrant with economic activity. Come through Checkpoint Charlie, East Berlin, gray, drab, not many goods on the shelves, not many cars on the streets, no freedom. Back to a place there's freedom, more bread. So there are a few places in the world where it's a little bit controlled. They're all Germans. It's all one city. Why such a marked contrast between West Berlin and East Berlin? One with freedom, one without. North Korea, South Korea. It's as homogeneous as we can make it. Not a great controlled experiment, but they are all Koreans. It is all one country. Why such a marked contrast between North Korea and South Korea? Because in South Korea, there's freedom. In North Korea, there's not freedom. More freedom, more bread. So you can begin to show that. Our think tank does a publication of 165 countries. It's called the Index of Economic Freedom. We look at 165 countries every single year on the basis of how is that country doing in allowing business freedom, trade freedom, investment freedom. How is that country doing in allowing verifiable property rights, having property rights and protected property rights? What kind of freedom is there to own and operate a business? How much freedom is there to get into business or to get out of business? So those are all economic freedoms. And the interesting thing, our founding fathers truly understood that it was the economic freedoms that were kind of the preface of everything else. Human freedoms are great. Yes, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, blah, blah, blah. They're wonderful. But you don't have any human freedoms without economic freedoms. So the economic freedoms are really the basis. Once again, not a perfect experiment, but you can look at Russia, the Soviet Union, and China. Soviet Union in late 80s, 90s, Soviet Union starts giving some freedoms to people. Freedom of religion, freedom of the press. They called it perestroika. They called it a glasnost. And yet nothing happened in the Soviet Union. It was pitiful. China, on the other hand, doesn't give any of those kind of freedoms. Freedom of speech, forget it. Freedom of religion, forget it. Freedom of this and that, no, forget it. But Deng Xiaoping began to give to the Chinese economic freedoms. 30-year leases on the land, get rid of collectivized agriculture, allow some private ownership, allow people to move and own their own homes. So China starts giving economic freedoms, but none of the other kinds of freedoms. And what's happened here the last 25 years? China has been growing at 8, 10, 12% average annual rates of growth. So I really think it is true that the economic freedoms are fundamental, and our founding fathers understood it perfectly. That's word number one, freedom. Word number two, or idea number two, is limited government. Our founding fathers were absolutely committed to designing a government that was limited government. Imagine Egypt right now. Imagine Libya right now. Just a question. I don't know the answer to the question. But how many people are sitting around small tables, big tables in Egypt or in Libya, and they're saying, look, it looks like we're going to lose a dictator. It looks like so-and-so, whether it be Gaddafi or Mubarak, it looks like they're out of the office. So this opens up a vacuum. Who's going to lead? What's going to lead? How's it going to lead? And what's it going to be about? But here's my point. How many do you think Egyptians and Libyans are sitting around thinking about designing the new and are talking about limited government? Are you kidding me? When you're ready to take power, you want more, not less. We want to control, blah, blah, blah. My point of even saying that is, think about the uniqueness of John Adams, James Madison, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, Thomas. Think of the uniqueness of these guys sitting around talking about limited government. Friends, it's not something that people do every day of the week. Talk about, but that's exactly what our founding fathers did. No, it's going to be limited government. No, we're going to have three branches of government: legislative, executive, judicial, to try to counterbalance each other. We're going to have state governments versus the federal government, once again, to counterbalance each other. We're going to have all kinds of separation in powers. We're going to have some Bill of Rights. We're going to have some state rights. We're going to have term limits on the presidency, blah, blah, blah. What was all that about? Limited government, limited government, limited. Oh, by the way, John Adams, James Madison, you guys write a constitution. But dear friends, we don't care exactly what you say except this. When you talk about this constitution, make sure it's full of delegations and enumerations. That is, federal government, these are your delegated powers, but no more. Federal government, these are your enumerated powers, but no more. So the founding fathers were absolutely committed to separation of power. They are absolutely committed to keep government limited. The founding fathers were scared to death of democracy. Now, we've got to do it somehow. I guess giving people a vote is how we're going to do it, because democracy is better than whatever is in second place. But a democracy is fundamentally unstable. A democracy says that 51% of us can take everything that 49% of us produce. Democracy, as James Madison said, a democracy is just simply two wolves, one sheep, voting on what we're going to have for dinner. A democracy, an election, is really just an advanced auction on stolen goods. And so they were tremendously concerned that in a democracy, the makers could overwhelm the takers, or vice versa. The takers could overwhelm the makers.